that all the messages you've had your whole life around romantic relationships may not have been that helpful, and be prepared to start from scratch with an open heart and mind. Today's video is going to be in response to Anjum's request for me to share my perspective through my life experience about romantic relationships. As usual, I'm going to simplify this so that we can remember it and apply it, hopefully. So let's begin with our distorted view of relationships. Now, without blaming anyone, we all have certain conditioned ideas about romantic relationships. I'm the first to admit, actually, that I spent most of my youth putting looks first. I just wanted someone who was handsome, someone I fancied, and that carried on into later years. But eventually, after too many relationships, I realized maybe I need to rethink things. Physical beauty has much to be admired, but how long does it last? We all know that outward beauty fades and physical strength diminishes in the end. And we also know that novelties wear off. So where you may have found someone extremely attractive in the beginning, after a while, when you get to know them a bit more and you become more familiar with them, suddenly your heart isn't beating as quickly anymore when you see them. We know all this, and yet we still very much buy into the whole messaging, don't we? But when you actually look at couples who have been together for a while, the happy ones, the ones who enjoy each other's company, that tells quite a different story, doesn't it? What's on the inside is a lot more important, and that will shine through on the outside. Now, Anjum, I know you shared with me about being Indian and how there's a lot of pressure that's being put on you to get married. You don't have to rush into marriage. This is about what's right for you and what you'll choose in your life. So try to pay less attention to all the advice that you've been given and tune in more to what feels right. The trouble is, when we want to access that inner wisdom, we often find that we're not able to, because the voice up here is so darn loud, right? All those thoughts, if you have intrusive thoughts, it can be very difficult to tune in to that intuitive wisdom that we need moment by moment, every single day. But remember, it's not about getting rid of thoughts. It's about where you put your focus. So realize that all the messages you've had your whole life around romantic relationships may not have been that helpful, and be prepared to start from scratch with an open heart and mind. This is, after all, quite an important topic. Let's look at expectations. All of us probably have or had a little list, at least mentally, if not physically, and sometimes it's a long list of desirable qualities we're looking for in a prospective life partner. Now, what is this list based on? Where did these ideas come from? Question that. We think we know what we want. We think we know what will make us happy. But reality paints a different picture, because most of the time, actually, we don't trust. I'm always talking about trusting your intuition, but don't trust your ideas about who you think is the right person for you. Now, there's having expectations and there's not having expectations. Not having expectations doesn't mean that you're just going to spend the rest of your life with the next person who asks you out on a date. It also doesn't mean that you have to put up with personality traits that you can't stand, or try and feel physically attracted to someone who you find repulsive. Not having expectations means that you're free to go through life in an open way, simply meeting people as they are without any demands. And when you interact with people in this way, first of all, you're more likely to make the other person feel relaxed so that they can be themselves, and you'll actually get a real taste of what this person is like. And you know, when a person is relaxed and they're happy and comfortable, most of the time I would say that person can be a desirable, pleasant person to be around. And I do like to point out that everyone is beautiful, in my eyes at least, when they smile. Don't you agree? I mean, it's not just me, right? Actually, I have to tell you this. I don't watch a lot of TV, but I recently, you know, being at home, recovering from the operation and being off work, I watched a little series called The Other Miss Bennet with my daughter. And there's this wonderful scene where she's invited to dinner and there's a lady there who's very jealous of her because the person she fancies is showing Miss Bennet a lot of attention. So she goes in, before it's time for everyone to sit down and eat, she goes in and rearranges the place settings. So Miss Bennet ends up sat between these two older gentlemen who seem very disinterested and uninteresting. One of them is kind of coughing a lot. During the dinner, she realizes, well, I may as well just make the best of it. So she leans over to the one gentleman and starts talking about a couple of things she's interested in, saying, have you read such and such a book? And he's like, no. So then she says to him, so what is it that you're interested in, sir? And in a very undignified way, with his mouth full of food, he says, horses. And she says, oh, well, I know nothing about horses, so please do tell me everything you know. And then ensues a most delightful conversation where this guy is he's just bubbling over with joy, sharing his love of horses, and she's laughing away and learning so much. And then everybody on the other side of the table, which was the more desirable end of the table, they're all sort of looking down at that end, thinking that they're missing out. So I thought this was a beautiful picture of what a joy it is to simply connect, really connect though, with another human being. If we don't start seeking a deeper truth about life, we can live our entire lives wearing a mask and putting on an act. Not a great place to be operating from, is it? That's why I hope that this video will really shed some light on this topic of romantic relationships and spark that inner wisdom so that you can go about this in a new, fresh way and start to meet people and interact with people in a way that can bring you closer to this goal of meeting your life partner. Why is it that so many relationships don't stand the test of time? Because they're based on the wrong things, is the first answer that comes to mind. Beauty fades, as we said, novelty wears off, and then people can also change as they grow. I know that my husband and I have changed over the last 20 odd years since we've been married. You have to allow for this, right? But if the foundation of your relationship is solid and you're growing together through life, then it doesn't need to be a problem. It doesn't need to be a problem at all. In fact, you can end up growing closer and closer together as the years roll by. So, what do we base this romantic relationship on? Well, first of all, what not to base it on. Don't base it on that other person making you happy. You have to make yourself happy. It's about connecting, remembering, discovering that part of yourself, that deeper part of yourself that is already happiness and wisdom and peace and love and compassion and acceptance and clarity and creativity and every wonderful thing that you can imagine. Your true inner essence is so bright, so full of divine light that we can't even fathom with our piddly little minds. Really, to have the most solid foundation in any relationship and just simply to go through life in the best way is to know yourself. This self-awareness journey, whatever you want to call it, this is key, because if you know yourself to be more than those random, troubling, insecure thoughts that occupy your mind so much, if you know yourself to not be that, if you know yourself to be more than this idea of who you are, if you know yourself to be more than the story of who you are, this character you've been playing your whole life with the mask on, then you'll be coming from a much more grounded place, a grounded place of awareness and of love, unconditional love. The more in touch you are with this aspect of your true nature, the more it will flow out and be expressed, and the more chance there is it will touch and speak to that same part of another person. Deep calls unto deep, if you like. I'm not quite sure how to express it in words, but it's just spirit to spirit. When you're fully present with someone, you really tune into them, and people feel that. They feel it when someone is truly listening to them, when someone is really present and open with a capacity to listen to you, to see you for who you really are, to understand what you're saying between the lines, to just meet you right here. There's no substitute for that. There's no course you can take or book you can read. There's helpful information, yes, and guidance, But this is something that you're born with. It's an innate ability to connect. Because deep down, we are connected in this way. But we're so familiar with the masks and the costumes that we wear in this human form that we often forget to connect in this way. This is a good foundation for a romantic relationship and for every relationship. In this way, you don't need to worry about trying to find someone who's into the same stuff that you're into, because this will happen very naturally. Be more interested in tuning into who this other person is and finding that light within them. Be more interested in that than in your list of requirements, than in your wish list for a future marriage, than in pleasing the people who are putting demands on you. Just be open to meeting the souls that you come across in this life. It's not as difficult as it may seem, because we all have this intuitive sense of a person's energy. We can sense if a person has an open energy or a closed energy, and we can sense energy changing. We can sense when someone has a needy energy and when someone has a freer energy. We can sense when someone is feeling a certain way quite often, right? So tune into this wonderful gift that you have and use it to connect with people, not with a view to getting a ring on your finger necessarily, but simply to connect, because you never know how life arranges things. If you were to connect with people in this way, without expectation, but with interest, with openness, with depth, but delightful depth, not heavy depth. Meet everyone where they're at and see what happens. One thing I can pretty much guarantee is that you're going to get to know yourself much better. And that is what's going to help you know when you come across someone who may be a potential match. So what is desirable when you're looking for a life partner? Well, obviously you want to get along, and I think a sense of humour is very important, but that's something that you can appreciate over time as well, because the more memories you have to look back on, the more you have to laugh about and talk about. And when you get to know each other really well, you can also have really fun digs at each other without anyone taking it personally. Sitting in your favourite chair, growing old together and having a laugh, I think is a rather beautiful picture of romantic love. Romance can be expressed in many different ways, such as suddenly dancing together in the kitchen. You want a love that lasts. How do you know it's going to be a love that lasts? No one can make you any guarantees. That's just the way it is. So don't fret if you're connecting on a deeper level, if it's not shrouded in expectation and pressure. If you can allow that person to be who they are, give them the freedom to express themselves, in a healthy way, of course, then you give yourself that freedom too. And I think ultimately that this is something very important that contributes to our joy in a relationship. It's this mutual freedom. You get to be who you are, and I get to be who I am. We can laugh about and celebrate our differences and the way that we annoy each other and wind each other up, because this is my life partner. This is the person who I'm walking through life with. And there's something, as you said, Anjum, there's something quite sacred about that. Laughter is one of the most important things. If you can laugh with this person, laugh easily and laugh often, then love can flow naturally. I think that where relationships have broken down quite often, it's because thoughts have come in, divisive thoughts, judgmental thoughts, criticisms, and instead of communicating these things or realizing the source of these things, we just begin to close our heart and distance that person and keep feeding that story of maybe they're not right for me, maybe I should leave, etc., etc. With our attention. We feed that story, we feed those troubling thoughts with our attention and then with our belief. If you don't know yourself more deeply, that will always be a possible danger in any relationship, right? That may cause it to break down. But if you're having a difficult time and you know yourself more deeply, then you can address these thoughts with your partner and you can speak about them, and something fruitful can come out of that, such as, okay, I didn't realize that bothered you so much, I'll try not to do that. Or, okay, can you please, can you do this for me if possible, because it would really make a difference and I'd appreciate it. Those kind of conversations, right? Instead of feeling you don't understand me and you're always like this and that kind of thing, right? We need to have this connection, and this connection with yourself will be the same connection that you then have with others. You'll be now, whether other people let you in or not, that's another matter, because you may have an open heart and the other person may have a closed heart. But if your heart is open, you will love and understand that person. You may not necessarily want to be with them every day for the rest of your life, but you may be able to meet them where they're at and help them to realize that they're safe with you and they don't need to keep closing their heart. So 2 more practical pieces of advice. If you have had unsuccessful romantic relationships in the past, please, please, please don't let that be a basis moving forward. Don't bring that baggage with you into new relationships, into fresh meetings with people. Leave that suitcase where it belongs, in the past, in your memory, a lesson learned. Every person you meet is different. Respect that and treat them accordingly. And the other thing is that you don't need to keep putting pressure on yourself to be a certain way. Right, I'm going to surrender to life because I know that's what I need to do. So I'm going to let life choose for me, yes. But if you're trying to do that because you feel it's the right thing to do rather than being ready for it with your heart, then that's also going to put pressure on you, right? Just focus on connecting with people. That's all. You'll be fine. Trust me. One of these people you connect with, you're going to connect with a little more deeply on a slightly different level. If you're focused on knowing yourself more deeply, if you recognize the troublesome mental narrative that keeps getting in the way and distracting you in life, then you will be in that grounded position of awareness. And from this position, you can listen to the wisdom within and be guided by it every day, in every way. So you don't need to worry about anything, really. I hope that was helpful, and I welcome more questions. I like to create videos answering questions as long as they're relevant to the type of content I create. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for hanging out with me. Thank you for putting up with all the ads. Thank you for tuning in week after week. Thank you for subscribing if that's something that you've done. And thank you for checking out my website, because there's always something interesting going on when it comes to content creation in my world. I just really hope and pray that these videos are helping you realize how wonderful you really are. Outward beauty fades quite quickly, actually, especially between 50 and 60. But anyway,